Yeah, come on. Yeah, there we go.
Hmm? Okay, Pablo.
Yes, Brother John.
All yours.
Yeah, we are live
You're live and well
and streaming.
and streaming.
And
Yes.
we are streaming. Where are we streaming?
Both Facebook and YouTube.
Facebook and YouTube. We on Facebook, are we?
Facebook, YouTube, and Radio Gardens and
Yeah, where on Facebook
Gem
are we?
FM, Gem FM Radio, gemfm.ca. I'll go send you
Okay.
the link there. Yeah. So you could share it with your compadres. Okay.
So we are live once again on GEMFM.ca, operated by Brother John Callisto over in Canada. And I am your good day host, Raphael Paul Pablo. I'm here with the heart of the matter. Yes, I've been off for quite some time, getting myself, sort of extending myself, in some other areas of work, of actual transformational activities. Transformational activities in the parish of Mark. So there are some things that we are aspiring towards in St. Mark, and you'll be hearing more about it as time goes by. Yeah. So this is what it is. This afternoon, we have with us a gentleman. He has been here before. He's well, very well known throughout. Brother John, I'm hearing a voice coming back at me. I wonder what's responsible for that. Brother John, I'm hearing two.
Let me check and see what's going on. I don't know what you get. I'm not hearing it from here.
I'm hearing a voice coming back at me.
Really?
Yeah.
Let me see. Okay, what are you hearing now?
Okay.
Is it better now?
No, I'm still hearing my echo.
Is it echo?
Yeah, I still hearing my repeat.
Wow. I have
Yeah,
nothing here that
I'm
is.
still hearing a repeat.
Oh,
Um,
how about now? Go ahead.
uh, no,
I,
I'm still hearing two voices.
wow. Where is that coming from?
Mm, still hearing two voices. I don't know.
Let me see. Let me see what happened on Facebook
What's
here.
responsible for that? Mm, I'm hearing two voices. I'm hearing two voices. I'm hearing a voice coming back at me. That's not how it's supposed to be when we
Tell me what
stray.
you're hearing now.
Yeah.
Yeah. How is it now?
Okay. Well, anyway, I'm still hearing.
Still hearing. Okay, hold on. Let me
Yeah.
go back.
Well.
Let me see what's happening here.
Yeah.
Um,
Um. Yeah. So while Brother John is getting this sorted out, I trust that the
this
echo
is
is not too
close.
much of a hindrance in you hearing what I'm saying to you. Okay. So this is the 25th edition, actually, of the Heart of the Matter. And as I said, I've been off seeing getting some community work up and running. So the gentleman that we have with us this afternoon, he has a very solid track record. And he was featured in this way. Yeah, he was featured in this way by the ACM. Yeah, the ACM is um, an science advisory body relating to journalism. Okay, I guess you'll hear a bit more about the ACM shop. But in any event, uh, this gentleman, he is amongst the first agricultural scientists addressing climate change concerns during the Caribbean, planning for adaptation to climate change CPPACC project.
That should say it all. You can stop. You can stop right here. It shows that I'm ancient and that I've been around for a while. So
Yeah, he's been around for a while,
you needn't you
providing the
needn't bore you needn't
agricultural
bore everybody with
facility
the long
and member
CV.
of
That
the
is
team.
that is
Yeah,
immaterial.
yeah.
What's important
Well,
is
you
what we're
see,
going to talk about today.
and that's the thing about this gentleman.
Eh,
He is just so not he's not into this.
no, no, no. I know my own history. We don't need to
Yeah.
go over that. The important
Well,
thing is that I'm
any,
back. I'm back with you,
any
Pablo.
yeah, in any event, I consider myself fortunate to be able to have this gentleman to join me and giving his track record, okay, and what he brings to the table, and the fact that he would take time off his busy schedule to come to share with us. Um, I really appreciate that. And I trust that
You're
our
more than
audience,
welcome.
yeah, will appreciate the information that he is going to share, okay, with us. All right. So, Mr. Maxime,
Steve, Steve,
last time
Steve,
you were here,
Steve, Steve, we always
last,
doing this thing,
la-
Pablo.
last time you were here, it
I
was
look
since,
at wait, Pablo, wait.
yeah,
I
go
looked
ahead.
at my birth certificate, right? And my birth certificate has Steve Maxime. I didn't see Mr. there anywhere, right? So I don't know where this Mr. is not a first name, right?
Yeah.
So my name is Steve. All right. So
Okay.
let's stick to Steve.
So,
Yeah.
so, so
So
at
we good.
least, so at least,
Good.
all you see what I mean? Yeah, all you see what I'm talking about? Anyway, you've
Yeah.
been here with us since March. We are in November. What have you been up to since in the interim?
Well, I am with PISLM these days. That is the Partnership Initiative for Sustainable Land Management. This
Mhm,
is the region's latest IGO. IGO is an intergovernmental organization, like CARDI and
mhm,
some of these fancy organizations. So
mhm,
PISLM has just been added to that list. So we are supposed to be implementing aspects of one of the United Nations charters. I mean, during the course of our discussion today, we probably talk about the UNFCCC, That's United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. This is a very popular one. There's also one called the UNCCD, which is United Nations Convention on Climate on Desertification, right? So this PISLM works out of that charter, out of that United Nations charter. So we are looking at soil care across the region, started with 8 countries, and we're expanding next year to all 17 member countries for the PISLM. So that's basically what I've been up to since we last spoke. This is a project in 8 countries, so I've been floating around those 8 countries doing this soil care thing. Yeah. So that's how I was entertaining myself in the last couple of months.
Soil care, you said. How critical is soil care to our overall agricultural industry as a whole?
I mean, soil is the basis of everything. I mean, of course, we can have hydroponics, we can have aquaponics, we could do vertical farming, we could farm in inert media, but when you get right back down to it, everything comes from the soil. And we have learned enough now to know that the quality of the nutrients in the food that we consume is linked back to the quality of the soil in which it was produced. When you do not have proper fertile soil, then you have to depend on chemical fertilizers and the whole mix of other things that that we've spoken about before. So soil is crucial, soil is central. I mean, without trying to sound cliched, soil is the foundation. I mean, you get nothing without soil, right? So that our project is looking at taking care of the soils in the region. The last set of soil surveys, official soil surveys done in the region, go back 60 years. And of course, the science had advanced in the 60 years. So now we are doing a new round of soil sampling so that when a farmer goes into his field, he knows exactly what type of soil he's dealing with, what it's lacking, what it may have too much of, and what you need to augment. When I say augment here, I don't necessarily mean adding fertilizer. I mean putting in the right compost and manures, etc., to make sure that soil comes up to its full potential.
So you speak about augmenting, and you say it doesn't necessarily mean putting in artificial
Chemical fertilizers. Yeah,
chemical fertilizer.
No, we're not.
Can you share a bit more on that? Because I think this is one area that you would hear talk about organic and that kind of stuff, but
Yeah.
I am not sure whether our people generally have an
Full understanding of what this is about.
full appreciation of what that is. Yeah.
Okay, well, you mentioned the magic word just now. When people tell me organic, I smile because 9 times out of 10, what they're referring to is maybe some form of chemical-free agriculture where they haven't been adding chemical inputs. But to say that you're going organic that's a brand. That is a certifiable brand. Somebody has to come from somewhere, come to your farm, and tick some boxes to be sure that you can really call the produce from that farm organic. And very few of us are able to do that in the sense of having the certifiers come and look at all our operations. Because you may be attempting to farm in an organic manner lower down the hill, but there are fellas uphill using all sorts of chemicals that are going to wash down into your soil. And the people who are doing the testing can find it. They can find the selenium and the zinc and the heavy metals, etc. So whenever people tell me about organic, I smile. I mean, I'm a member of GOM. I belong to the Grenada Organic Agriculture movement. But we understand that once you use that magic word organic, you're talking about a certifiable brand. What I do believe in is chemical-free, reduced pesticide use, that type of thing. That's what I'm promoting. That's what I'm talking about now. Limiting the use of chemical fertilizers, or so-called inorganic fertilizers. Because when you use your manure is using as a fertilizer, right? When you put compost, it's acting as a fertilizer. It's not an inorganic fertilizer. And for those of us involved in the climate change thing, we don't want to be using fertilizers that were produced with petrochemicals, because this is what we're trying to cut down on. This is what we're trying to avoid as we fight the impacts of climate change. So in one fell swoop, what we're talking about is producing food using minimal amounts of these so-called inorganic fertilizers or these inorganic chemicals as well. So you don't want to be using the herbicides and the pesticides and so of old. That's what we're aiming for. A more chemical-free type agriculture, but we can't use the brand name organic, because if you're producing on your farm, you have a very natural lifestyle. You're not using any chemicals, but because there are people higher up the hill than you cannot take your produce now and take it to Silver Sands for the people in Grenada who, appreciate what I'm talking about. Or you can't take it to Sanders and tell them it's organic, because if they make the mistake of putting that onto their menu and saying it's organic, and somebody comes who has the wherewithal to test it, you could put them at great risk, not just health-wise, but in a legal sense as well, right?
So we have our farmers who are beginning to get into that kind of
Pesticide-free farming.
pesticide-free farming. How does that impact, if ever, on the market value?
Well, boy, you just hit the magic note there.
Yeah, is there a market for
There is a market for organic. I mean, there are some countries. I mean, I'm speaking specifically about one of my favorite countries now, Dominica. In Dominica, I was lucky enough to work with and be friends with, to me, the most decorated organic farmer this region has produced, a guy called Andrew Roye. He passed on many years ago, but Andrew was able to command a higher price for his produce because people understood that it was organically grown, even though he wasn't certified, by some external certifier. People knew who he produced his stuff. They knew where where this manure came from. They saw how he tilled the soil, etc. So he was able to command a significantly higher price than the traditional produce. But outside of that, unfortunately, thus far, we have not had systems that could discriminate like that. In some countries, like in my home country of Trinidad, NAMDEFCO, which is the marketing agency, the equivalent of your MNIB here, right? They have something called farm certified. So in other words, if you're buying produce from a certified farm, you may be willing to pay a little more because you know that produce was developed in a very safe, if as close to organic as possible way. Yeah. But outside of that, the real difficulty comes when you have to come with a price differential, because let me give you an example. In Dominica, as far as I've been told, and I was told this about a month or so ago, there are 11 certified GAP farmers. Now, a GAP is a system called Good Agricultural Practices. So there's a whole checklist of stuff that people go through, and you're GAP certified. So here's the dilemma for these 11 or 12 GAP certified farmers in Dominica. If you're a GAP certified farmer and you're growing tomatoes, let's say, when you turn up in the market with your tomatoes, the joker next door to you who used a ton of chemicals, whatever else, is coming to the market and getting the same price as you. So really, there's no incentive. There's absolutely no incentive for you to continue to use GAP unless, of course, you have found that it's your produce costs less, so that even though you're not getting a price differential in the market, you are producing at a lower cost. So at least that's how you make your profit. But in terms of recognizing it in the marketplace and having somebody say, well, I'm buying from Pablo rather than buying from Steve because Pablo is GAP certified, that doesn't happen. Yeah. So fortunately, and this is where, my particular thing comes in, we have developed a system that is going to be getting to that stage where we can have a price differential based on how the thing was produced, something to rival the organic status. And that's the CSAC thing that I mentioned the last time I spoke to you, which is a climate smart agriculture compliant thing that is being rolled out in the region as we speak. So it's coming. But right now, if you're producing, I mean, you can call your produce organic if you want, but you just can't take it to the market and get a differential price because of it. If you look at people like Teresa Marisho, right, and her women's group, they get a premium price because they're certified. You know, they have come up with arrangements where their produce will literally stand out because they can tell you who produced it, where, and how. So that in that respect, you know, her women's group might be able to sell to Silver Sands, let's say, at a premium as opposed to somebody off the street coming to sell to Silver Sands. But she cannot label it as organic. Yeah, it could be farmer certified, it could be farm certified, it could come up with any flow of words you want once you don't use the word organic. Yeah.
Organic, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Speaking of marketing of agricultural products and so, how significant is agricultural products to regional trade?
Well, I mean, I'm no trade policy expert, but I mean, if just as another scientist out there working in the field, I can tell you that there are still a number of non-tariff barriers. These are barriers, I mean, these are obstacles put in the way of trade. In other words, if I can use a very popular, if not beaten example, you can't sell Grenadian honey in Trinidad, right? Because I mean, as far as the Trinidadians are concerned, they don't want to import any pests, any wax moth, any type of what I refer to as SPS concerns, sanitary and phytosanitary measure concerns. So in other words, they are saying, and this may or may not be true. I mean, this is not a place for us to argue that, but I'm just saying that is an example of why you can't sell honey, Grenadian honey in Trinidad. The reason the Trinidadians give is that, they're not too sure what they're getting, and there might be some sort of disease and so that comes in and will affect the local honey industry in Trinidad and Tobago. So that would be an example of some of the intricacies of marketing stuff across the Caribbean. But the main problem, as far as I'm concerned, is about transport and logistics, right? There was a time when Persia was sailing. I don't know how familiar you are with the inter-island schooner type trade, so that you could stack a whole set of dashing out in St. Vincent and get it down to Trinidad at the CARICOM jetty, and have a really good thing going. Now, there aren't as many of those ships available. And we have always had, not always, but we have had that problem for a long while, this inter-island connectivity. I'm sure you would have seen the stories of a number of entrepreneurs who said, for us build boats and said, we're going to be doing cargo from Grenada to Trinidad and to what have you. But, most times those things fail, not necessarily because the vessels weren't seaworthy, but the necessary permission and protocols and taxes and every government wants to make sure, it has its finger in a bit of the pie, so that they don't want people operating in their waters and they're not getting their cut, to put it bluntly. And that has been, to me, one of the major reasons why we haven't had the free flowing of marketing of goods, because there are areas in the Caribbean where you have a surplus of producing. If you've ever been lucky enough to go to Guyana, you would see that, there's produce coming out of Guyana that, if we had proper interconnectivity by land, by sea, sorry, then, we have less of an issue than we have now. But as you well know, it's easier to send something from Trinidad to Grenada via Miami in a container than to try to get it from Trinidad to Grenada, on a schooner or one of the regular vessels. Yeah, which is sad, very, very sad. I remember even when I was relocating, you know,
Mm.
I had to put stuff on a 20-foot container from Trinidad to get it to Grenada. But of course, it got here via Miami, because there's no containerized shipping between Trinidad and, well, not at the time that this is what, more than a decade ago when I moved over to Grenada. Yeah. So uh, that would be my major take on it in terms of the marketing, because a lot of this stuff would sell itself. You know, you can't find a Trinidadian who wouldn't appreciate soursop from Grenada. All right. But of course, I mean, Grenadians being brighter than that, didn't realize that you can get a better price in the US for your soursop. So I mean, so by the time the soursop gets to Trinidad, I mean, it is, without being facetious, I think it would be seconds, because any right thinking Grenadian farmer with soursop would think first of sending it north than to send it south. Yeah. And the same thing
Yeah.
happened when wind for bananas was a big thing. Yeah. What we saw in Trinidad from Winfer was the rejects. I mean, seconds. I mean, there's nothing wrong with it. Don't get me wrong. It's just that, the confirmation wasn't perfect, so that the English market, would figure each of these blemishes and things is a black mark, as it were. When you could send that in Trinidad, and because in Trinidad we don't have bananas. I mean, we have fig in Trinidad, and we don't have bananas in Trinidad. We can't grow Cavendish bananas in Trinidad because of Panama disease and a whole host of other reasons, right? So that when we get bananas, rare bananas from the Windward Islands, well, we're getting it from Suriname now and from DR, but I mean, so the idea, to me, the issue is never one of marketing. It's more production and scheduling, making sure that we don't have the gluts and the scarcity and the glut kind of thing. Because when fellas see that tomatoes $10 a pound, everybody want to plant tomatoes now. So by the time everybody's crop come around, tomatoes is only $1, and fellas grumble, and then they
Yeah.
stop. So that price goes back up to $10, but nobody has, right? So that, it's a simplification, don't get me wrong, but I mean, but that to me is
I know.
the gist of it,
Mm.
without trying to get too technical and, come up with the trade figures and all that. I mean,
Mm. Mm.
the reality on the ground is that's part of it.
Well, we see that climate change and the effects of climate change and some of the events ensuing from climate change
Like burial.
to tend to affect our agricultural sector.
Yep.
And as you say, like burial, because
When
when you
last year
were
I planted, when last year I planted in Grenada?
oh, I had some planting
When
recently
when
for
when last when last you saw Mr. Green Fig in Grenada?
well, fortunately where I am located.
In St. Mark, you were spared up some of the trouble in St. Mark, right? But if
Yeah,
you're in
well,
St. Patrick or in Carriacou,
the thing about it is I spend a significant amount of time in the Brothers, Florida area. So,
okay, right.
I'm fortunate in that way that
You were spared. You were spared. You were spared. Yeah.
I do have some access to planting and to green
Yeah.
bananas
But
and
but,
plum.
but as a general rule, you know that planting
Yeah,
is, yeah.
it is. I mean, it's $4 a pound for green bananas right now. And I
That
mean,
is, I mean, I shouldn't say that, but that's not normal. Let me put it that way. That's not
eh,
normal. That's not.
and it's that, that's just the way it is. Yeah, so from since that time, but that being said, what would you say are some of the major takeaways from Beryl?
I don't know.
Um,
I mean,
given
yeah,
given the
I might be wrong. I might be the wrong person to ask, because this is what I do. I mean, I'm involved in this climate
Mm,
change. So I would have been one of the people talking about the possibilities of something like a barrel for many, many years. So in other words, barrel didn't come as a surprise. I mean, the fact that it impacted the agriculture didn't come as a surprise either. What was sad is that, we don't really take these things seriously. Let's forget barrel and climate change. Look back to COVID. Do you remember how interested everybody was in agriculture during COVID? I mean, the government declared agriculture workers, I mean, the lowest of the workers in our Caribbean societies, all of a sudden they became essential workers. Remember that? Remember those days? When, I mean, agriculture workers were touted as being, the saviors. But once things got back, once things were regularized, everybody forgot these essential workers. Yeah. So that our difficulty has been how we prioritize agriculture. Now, I mean, this is not a Saturday evening sermon, so I hope I'm not preaching, but I feel very strongly about this thing. One of the serious difficulties in agriculture, right? And I want to be very careful how I say this, and I want to be open to questions from anybody, from anywhere, right? We, as a society, as a people, and even as farmers, do not take agriculture seriously. Let me explain what I mean by that. Agriculture is a science and an art. Listen to me carefully. A science and an art. The difficulty with agriculture is that everybody can do it. In other words, it's not something you're supposed to go to school to learn and things, because everybody could stick a seed in the ground and see it grow. And that perception pervades right through the society. It pervades right through the society, from experienced farmers telling the children, that, you don't want to get into agriculture because that is backbreaking, that is low status, that is, although that agriculture send them to university, yeah, but that is low status, it's this, it's that. You listen to any over 40 professional in the region, male or female. Do you know what they tell you when they say, I'm thinking of retiring, when I retire, I will go into farming? You know why? Because everybody could do that. You never hear professionals at age 40 or 45 say, when I retire, I'm going to go into arc welding. But they will kill themselves, right? But if you go into arc welding and you don't know what the hell you're doing, you try to arc weld a gas tank or something, and you're going to find pieces that are all over the place, right? But agriculture is something that, I mean, we all grew up on, I grew up on our farm too. I grew up with chickens in the backyard. Everybody tie out a goat and tie out a goat here and tie out a goat there. But that does not make you a farmer. And that is the essential difficulty I have with the sector. And that because we don't take ourselves seriously, people don't take us seriously either, because it is something that everybody can do. So if you tell someone, I'm a trained and successful farmer, they might listen to you, yeah, say, yeah, okay, you might know what you're doing, yes. But if at the same time you just said that, the next thing you say is that I catch a material, everybody in their right mind would think, if you're so successful, and you're so good at this thing, how come you're catching your tail? How come you don't want your own child to get into it? So then there must be something about this agricultural thing that is just smoke and mirrors, It is what you expect your child are not doing too well at school, you say, maybe the boy could go and do garden. You know how deep that statement is? You know how much old talk my mom got? When I am topping my school and they're hearing that I'm going to be doing agriculture, In other words, it's almost as if, the boy too bright for that. I mean, that's not what these people, have a little bit of education supposed to be doing. But I have O-level agricultural science at Cambridge GCE, right? Because I was lucky enough to go to the one school in Trinidad that was doing agricultural science. This is long before Cape, of course, long before Cape and CSEC and all that, right? We're talking about GC Cambridge O-levels, right? I have a passing GC Cambridge O-level agricultural science, right? So that when I look at people in the sector, I tend not to take on the people who tell me that, I could farm because my father used to farm. Yeah, but I mean, I know people who father used to be welders and things too, but they don't think they could weld just because your father was an arc welder. Why do you ever think, well, when I retire, I'm going to do arc welding like my father and go and kill yourself somewhere, So it starts there, right? That's the first part. The second part is that we hold agriculture to a different standard. And sorry to preach here, Pablo, but
Yeah, but
that's difficult.
that's
That's
the whole,
difficult. When
the
you
whole
start
thing.
when you start about Trini, you start about Trini, you can't stop. Right? So here what has been my, and the reason why I can speak so fluently about this, Pablo, is that I've been dealing with this for the last 40 something years. You hearing me? For the last 40 something years, right? 33 years ago, I actually wrote a book on careers in agriculture. I felt so strongly about it, right? I used to be going around to schools at their career day and talking about, agriculture as a choice, a career choice, not just as a last resort choice. In other words, it's not if you feel everything else, well, I guess you could come and do something in agriculture. I'm talking about people who are making a conscious decision, so-called bright people deciding to come into this sector, right? And here's how we cheapen ourselves. When your son graduates with a degree in electrical engineering, yeah? You hear me, Pablo? Right? Your son or your daughter gets a degree in electrical engineering. When that son or daughter comes home and you're doing some renovation in your house, you dare not ask that child to help you wire the house. You know why? Because as bright as they might be, as certified as they might be as electrical engineers, they don't have a wireman's license. No?
Right.
They can't help you pull a single wire. I mean, if you're doing it privately, and you didn't care if your house burned down, you could say, but if you wanted to be passed by the electrical inspectorate, somebody with a wireman's license has to do that.
Has
You
to
know
do
why?
that.
Because we recognize that there's a difference between the technologist and the technician. That distinction is nowhere close in agriculture. When you graduate with a degree in agriculture, I feel like come out here and say, help me run these lines here and put down an A-frame. If you can't do that, the first watch it as a joke. They say, but that is a choke and talk agriculture man there. You can't implant nothing. But that's not what they train me to do. That is not what they train me to do. They train me to operate in a different environment, right? It doesn't mean that if I apply myself, I won't be able to have some of the technician skills. But somebody coming out of ECAF and somebody coming out of UE at the same time, the person in ECAF will always be able to wrap up when I say wrap up, not run rings around them, in terms of the practical, technical things on the ground, they'll be able to castrate a pig faster than I can do it. No, don't get me wrong. I was trained to castrate pigs too, but that was only one course for like 1 week. They've been doing that for 2 years. Yeah. So I expect them to be better at it than I am. Otherwise, there's no place for them. What are they to be in the sector for if they can't outcompete me in that area? Now, notice I didn't say level, because not as if I'm at a higher level than them. I'm in a different area.
It's a different sector.
Different area. And that distinction, Pablo, I can put my head on a block and tell you, none of your listeners could argue with me about that. You know why? Because I've lived that. I've been through that. I've argued that at the highest levels. I've spoken to prime ministers about this, right? I mean, I was part of the first agricultural professional associations of Trinidad and Tobago, something called APAS. Professor John Spence, deceased, was the first president. I was the second president. And this is where we are trying to get people to understand that there are professionals in this sector that do certain things and that are qualified to do certain things. And you cannot judge them by operations in another area, right? So when sometimes a politician might meet me and tell me, all these graduates, they don't want to get their hands dirty. That's rubbish. It's not that they don't want to get their hands dirty. I mean, I'm not saying, don't get me wrong, and I'm not saying that there might be the 1 or 2 graduates who come out here who feel that they're brighter than the world and they don't want to get their hands dirty. But getting your hands dirty is not in and of itself enough for the kind of training that we were exposed to. We want to get our hands dirty, yes, to take a sample to come up with a better way of doing something that the technician is not trained to do, right? In the same way that the electrical engineer can design the wiring for the entire building, right? A 10-story building, but to actually pull the wire and decide, which grade wire goes where and some of the techniques and twisting it to make sure you get it through the pipe, and they wrap them up. And I use those examples all the time because I have friends who are licensed electricians, and they make fun of electrical engineers all the time. I mean, when I say all the time, I mean, they literally wrap them up. Now, listen, they have no way of getting the same salary as an electrical engineer. Don't get me wrong, right? See,
Yes.
because they recognize different. Your skill is in a particular area. Notice I keep saying area, not level. Eh? The electrical engineer is skilled in another area. And unless you have training for both, the two never meet. Of course, the electrical engineers who could wire a house because their father was an electrician, or maybe they would have apprenticed with an electrician before. But that degree that they got from you is not about
It's
wiring a
not
house.
about wiring
It's
a
not
house.
about wiring a house. You know,
Yeah.
I mean, I say sorry to preacher Pablo, but this
Mm.
is something that really, really bothers me. And it explains why the sector isn't taken seriously. I mean, I have known ministers personally, ministers of agriculture, who didn't go to the office for weeks when they got the portfolio, you know, because that's a demotion, you know.
Listen, we see, but, 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 I mean, this is being disingenuous, really, because we see a lot of talk, we see a lot of pronouncements being made in
Yeah.
international and regional fora, where people speak about agriculture, agricultural products is being
But
touted
they
as
talk
being
about food. They talk about food, Pablo. Let me interrupt you. They talk about food. There are very few
food
people who make the
service.
connection between agriculture and food, you know.
Say that again?
There are very few people who make the connection between agriculture and food, you know. So let's talk about the food import bill and the food this and the food that and thing. But that connection between agriculture and food is not from there, you know. Food is something you import, you know. Food is something you buy,
Yeah,
right?
but if we're talking about the cost of the import, because I see conversations about these things, the cost of the import. And
Yeah.
if we were to be able to produce, you
Mm-hmm.
know, even a percentage of what is
25 by 20, 25 by 2025. I mean, that's the latest buzz coming out of CARICOM that we are supposed to cut our food import bill by 25% by the year 2025, which happens to be next year, by the way. Right? So you always get that kind of talk. But what I'm saying is that the the means of producing the thing is never taken seriously. I shouldn't say never taken seriously. It's often not taken seriously by the people who are supposed to promote it. So when you find a minister of agriculture who is really engaged, who really sees this as a promotion, who really sees this as a stepping stone to make a big impact on the entire society, that separates that minister of agriculture from the other ministers of agriculture out there who are just biding their time to get a real cabinet position. And I'm not just making this stuff up, you know. Let me give you a practical, I always give examples from the country in which I vote, right? They can't throw me out of Trinidad, right? They can't stop me from ever going back to Trinidad. So I can see where I want, right? Let me tell you something about the government in Trinidad and Tobago. When the UNC went into its second term under uh, Kamala Prasad Bisesa, right? There were a number of people from the old UNC and the one that was under Pandey who took a long time to come over to her side, right? As the new lady on the block, you know. So when they won the elections, you know, it was a toss-up who would get the plum ministries because you know ministries are seen as plums, eh? I mean, you know, so there are high-level ministries, you know, finance and you know, tourism and you know, and foreign affairs, you know, you get to fly up and down the plate, that kind of thing. And then there are the other ministries that dog eat your supper with them, right? Like agriculture. So it is alleged, and I have no reason to doubt. And as a Trini voting in Trinidad, I can say this publicly. Vasan Maraj took a long time to come over to the Kamla Prasad Bisesa side of the fence. Yeah. Even within the same party. So him being a very bright fellow, most people thought, okay, he'd be made minister of planning or, you know, one of those highfalutin ministries. Yeah. Because remember, this is the same country where a minister said he don't want to be minister of Baji and Pumpkin. Eh? I'm not making this stuff up, right? As a trainee, I'm telling you, I was there, hear it, and see it with my own ears and eyes, right? I was Travis Sudama. He said he don't want to be Minister of Baji and Pumpkin because as far as he was concerned, that is a demotion. So coming back to the Basan Barad story now. So she made Basan Barad Minister of Agriculture. Technically, a way to punish him, man. You take too long to come over to my side, Take the small work here. Literally. But the fellow was bright. Not was bright, is bright. Right? He decided, look, I have technicians in the ministry who know what they're doing. Let me give them room to run. Man made such an impact. You're following me, Pablo? He made such an impact that after a couple of years, she realized, wait now, man. This fella really doing wonders, and this boy ain't joke bright to them. So she promoted him. Are you hearing what I'm saying? She promoted him out of agriculture because a bright fella like that shouldn't really be wasting away in agriculture. Made a minister of planning or something highfalutin like that. And then, and this is my interpretation of it now, she looked around for the most, I want to be kind. I want to be kind. The less gifted of her cabinet members to put in agriculture, right? And I don't want to stain the man's reputation, but most Trinidadians will know who I mean. And they put him in agriculture and he fumed and thing for a couple of months. And then they lost the elections after that, so you didn't have to worry about it. So you see the depth of the things I'm talking about, so that you can hear pronouncements about food. I mean, there's the CARICOM, 25 by 20 and 25. But then you look at the power of the ministers. As I was particularly pleased here in Grenada when I saw how the ministries were allocated. Remember when Minister Andrew started off with a super ministry, agriculture, tourism, okay. So Persuader, what's Persuader's right name? Sorry.
Adrian
Minister
Thomas.
Thomas, right. Minister Thomas came in as the Minister of Agriculture, right? Then you see that he was, I had to put it as a promotion. He's promoted now and he's handling tourism, right? So what does that tell you about the power in the cabinet, the power of the agriculture minister in the cabinet? You fast forward to another country now, a country like St. Vincent and the Grenadines, where the Minister of Agriculture is seen as a powerhouse. Yeah. So you would expect that operations there would be slightly different. I'm not only saying that because I'm his advisor. I'm saying that because when you look at the track record and you look at the level of involvement, these are people who see the power of the agricultural sector because they make the connection between agriculture and food. But I can assure you, when I was a youngster, say 30 years ago or so, if I wanted to find out what the price of chicken would be, I didn't have to listen to the Minister of Agriculture. I listened to the Minister of Industry and Commerce because chicken is an imported item and, they will be the ones setting the prices. Ministry of Agriculture had nothing to do with chicken, right? That's farming. That's the fellas on the highway, they're giving trouble every now and then, say they want this and they want that. Right? The late Jones P. Madeira, a man I admired, told me to my face once, he said, agriculture is not news, right? If the farmers protest and they decide they're going to, dump milk on the roundabout or something, that's news. But if a farmer gets 20,000 pounds of cassava, that's not news. He's supposed to get that. So as I said, sorry to go off onto it tangent, but
Given all that you've said here, what is our prospect as a region now of really attaining that level of
self-sufficiency? I think our chances are even better than before. You know why? Because necessity is bringing about that. You see, in the same way that we can find all kind of innovative ways around COVID to get people to stick something in the backyard, the seed distributions in the newspapers in Trinidad, those kinds of things. You see how everybody was keen on you. When the crunch comes, that's when we're at our best. And unfortunately, it takes several crunches to get us to, get our act together. But I can tell you that I am extremely positive about the future of agriculture in this part of the world because I think there's a generation coming up there that understands it, understands that it is a It is a career that is, I mean, rewarding. So they're not operating with the objectives of their parents. The parents used to tell you, you know, I don't want no child of mine in agriculture, you know, I don't want you outside breaking your back in the hot sun and thing, you know. But now they look around and they see, you know, who are the people driving the BMW? What are people really doing well? What are people talking about going on vacation? What are people are talking about investing in other concerns? What are people talking about the circular economy and all the marketing and all the blockchains and the digital technologies and things? These are the young people. These are the ones I talk to and I hang out with. Not only are they the future, they see the future. They understand that, you know, that years of your parents saying, you know, I don't know how anybody can get into agriculture. I always told those old fellas, especially in Trinidad, I say, if you really want to get out of agriculture, send me a land. All of a sudden they start, you know, they start hemming and hawing and, well, you know, keeping the land for my children. No, they're not keeping the land for children. They're keeping the land to continue making the kind of profits they're making right now. But for a host of reasons, including taxation, I mean, and if you live in a place like Trinidad, you want to go about the place saying you're doing well because I mean, you know, there's always the odd bandit there willing to relieve you or whatever you say you have. But I mean, outside of that, you know, there's a recognition by this generation, and I'm lucky enough to have taught this generation, to have worked with them, have invested in some of their programs, and I know that they're doing well, right? And they will continue to do well, right? So I have a lot of confidence. I don't think we go there, you know, don't get me wrong, right? I'm just saying that we're going to have to weed out a lot of people along the way, which is unfortunate but true, you know. And the people we're going to weed out are the ones who refuse to embrace the new technologies, right? Look at this spate of recent heat waves, you know. When a farmer tells you that, you know, the tomatoes don't even know if they flower or not, it's not only that they don't know if they flower or not. Tomatoes flower within a temperature range, especially night temperatures. If you exceed that range, then they just won't flower. But we have hormonal treatments and things now that we can use, right? So if you're a farmer and you're aware of these technologies, there was a time when you looked at a field that was flooded. Yeah, Pablo, you look at a field of melangen or anything that was flooded. When I say flooded, I mean water, 2 inches of water across the entire field. And you look at that and say, oh boy, your plant's dead, boy. No, there are technologies now, there are treatments now that can bring back those plants. But with all due respect to people my age, we are not the ones who understand that technology. It's the younger generation that understands that. Yeah. The younger, better trained, more willing farmers are the ones who are going to get us through that. And there are a lot of them out there. Don't get me wrong, you know, there are a lot of them out there. And we have been lucky in this sector to attract some really intelligent people. Because if it was up to parents and teachers, very few of these very bright people would be in agriculture today. And again, any of our callers could call in and challenge me on that, you know, because as I said, I've been involved in this thing for the last 40 years, and I've taught agriculture at university, I've taught agriculture at secondary school, you know, so that I can tell you what happens within the system and the kind of people that have gotten into this system, into the sector, in spite of what their parents said and in spite of what the negative connotations were. So we're going to make it. We're going to get through this. And the same way that we got through the eruptions of Soufrière, we got through COVID, we got through Beryl, we are going to get through. But I'm saying that it's going to take effort from a lot of us who are still in the trenches and younger ones, those behind us, who are going to really take that torch and run with it.
Speaking of the technologies and agricultural practices, uh, given the changes that we have in our climate, those unpredictable periods of drought or excessive rains, and so what are some of the mitigating steps that we can take so that our productivity and not negatively impacted by these vacillating situations.
Okay, so you notice I was careful not to try and play economist, but I can play agronomist here because this is what I do. This is what I do. So I can speak with a kind of
But you,
authority, you know. But they
but
see the
you,
next
but you
10
track, but your track records have you in all them field. You have you in
I
banking,
I
in
know, I know, I know,
everything.
I know, but the importance is that in the where the ones where I can speak freely and know that, as Dr. Economics used to say, when I know dog bark, I kind there are areas that I feel I know to an extent. I wouldn't I could take questions from anybody anywhere kind of thing. No, but coming back to the whole business of how we get into this crisis, because we're in a climate crisis, and
Mhm.
something called climate smart agriculture that got a bad name for years. And as I say, one of my only claims to fame is the fact that I was looking at it for a long time, which is what you started when you started describing, as one of the first other scientists, agricultural scientists, to look at this climate change thing. So I've been in the trenches for the longest while, and we have come up with solutions. There are solutions out there, right? There are countries out there where they're getting past the sea level rise, the salination, they're getting past the droughts, they're getting past the heat waves, they're getting past the flooding. Why? Because there are technologies out there. And as I said, under the rubric of this thing called climate smart agriculture, which got a bad name before, but which is now hopefully coming into its own because we have defined it. In the beginning, when people talk about climate smart agriculture, people used to talk about all kinds of things. Once you're doing water harvesting, then you're doing climate smart agriculture. If you're using some manure, you're using that's climate smart agriculture. And I've spent the last 10 years, I would think, in all 15 CARICOM countries, including Haiti, talking about that same thing, that this thing that we call in climate smart agriculture can't be just off and on, one thing here and there, right? So we are now at the stage where the system that I developed called CSAC is now accepted. We signed a declaration in St. Vincent. St. Vincent has adopted it as the de facto way in which it's going to proceed, and other countries are coming on board. So when I tell you that, it means that there are technologies out there that we all know. Difficulty with this sector is that you can't do one thing at a time in this sector. It calls for, and this is a word I heard you using, transformation. The changes for this sector are not cumulative changes. In other words, you don't change this. Let me give you an example. Everybody like to talk about their safe driver, right? There are safe driving certificates now, right? Defensive driving certificates. You can attend a course, right? Like the post office here in Grenada, they went through a program there for their drivers on defensive driving, right? So they have to have certificates in it, right? So they've been trained. But what that does, it tells you that you can't, if all you do is change your brakes, so you have the best new ceramic brake pads, right? That doesn't make you a safe driver now. If you continue driving like an idiot, like you used to drive before, if you still have your head, your high beam on it, when you're going around corner or something, which is a favorite Grenadian pastime, I must say, right? So what does that say? It has to be a transformation. You have to change the way you drive. You're now a defensive driver. There are things that you do. You're driving for the other person. As you approach an intersection, you expect the other fellow there to be an idiot. Because that's basically what you're doing now. You expect the other person to be an idiot so that you don't have a oops moment when because you break the traffic light, you have to end up saying, hey, boss, you hit me. No, you have to assume that, he's an idiot. He may break it. So there's a way to approach that intersection, right? And that is what has happened with climate smart agriculture. We have been tinkering with it and doing one thing at a time. What it calls for now is a transformation. And this is not just Steve Maxime talking. I was lucky enough to be on a consultant team that the FAO is the big guns in agriculture, right? The Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations worldwide, in all 190 something countries, fine. They came to us as part of the Mona Climate Studies group here in the region and said, look, go through these projects first and explain to us why none of these have been transformational. So when I'm speaking, I could speak, as I said, with a kind of authority that, no dog can bark, eh? I mean, you can challenge me, but you're gonna be being at the moon as Shakespeare would say, right?
Yeah.
So I'm confident. I'm sort of definite in my own head that we're going to get it right. But it's just that a lot of these things have to be implemented in a transformational way. And that's why I was so glad when you used that word again, transformation in St. Mark's, and that's what we need, is a transformation. To do it piecemeal and to do it cumulatively doesn't work. So in other words, you can't wait until the driver, sorry to use the post office as the example, but I mean, the example I know about, you can't wait until the drivers in the post office say, okay, I'll fix brakes this week. Next week, I will see about adjusting my headlights. In the interim, they could kill people, It calls for a transformation. You have to apply all of them at the same time. It has to be transformation. So when somebody sees you driving now, they say, hey, you don't drive like you used to drive a long time ago. Not only does he have good brakes, not only does he anticipate what other people are doing, but he's dimming his headlights, he's doing this, he's doing that, he's doing the other. Same thing in agriculture. When you have this climate smart agriculture that we are talking about, then it is something that is going to be transformational. You're not going to be doing one or two things here and there. Like the one that used to upset me the most, I've gotten a lot older now and hopefully a little wiser, so I don't get as upset again, is when people tell me about water harvesting. If you know, that used to frustrate me. I have a water harvesting project, and I'm like, okay, cool. I mean, so what is it about? Oh, well, I have the tapping and I'm collecting water, but then you're going to use the water in the same irresponsible way as you was using the water. So what's the sense in that? I mean, I am supposed to be impressed because you're doing water harvesting now. And if you really want to get me ignorant, in the old days, it's like 2 years ago, you talk to people like Evans Gooding, my partner from NIFO, from Northeast Farmers Organization. I mean, Gooding has been with me at conferences and at meetings across the region, so he knows what I give. And anytime he hear anybody say anything about any irrigation project, he just started laughing. He say, you ain't supposed to say that in front of Stephen. There's no such thing as an irrigation project. There's no project where you're just going to be irrigating irrigation must be accompanied by some kind of drainage. Where all this water that irrigating going? So it's really a water management project, an aspect of which is irrigation. You tell me that I'm comfortable, but you can't tell me you have a water harvesting project. What the hell is that? What are you harvesting this water to do? To use it in the same stupid way that you was using water when it was getting from the water? So all that has changed is the source of the water. I mean, the water you're wasting now is water that you harvest, right? As opposed to the water that Nawasa got from one of the dams. Yeah. So I am extremely confident. I know we're going to get through, right? If only one thing people take out of this couple of hours that we're talking here, it is that we are out in a good way, right? But it is going to take this omelette is going to require some eggs to be broken, unfortunately. But once we know why we're breaking the eggs, and we know that there's an outcome at the end, I think we're good. I think we're good. And I think the politicians, they're all coming to the point where they realize that they managed to scrape through COVID. Something else like that again, and they may not be able to scrape through it. So a lot of them are getting more, a little more savvy with the whole business of how you become truly independent, or at least as independent as you can be, by having a level of food sovereignty, and that's where agriculture comes in.
One of the things that, well, two things here. Coming out of Beryl, for an extended period thereafter, there were these little flying things all over the place. Yeah.
Even the Prime Minister mentioned it. The Prime Minister mentioned it at the Commonwealth Health Government meeting. He said now there are these millions of little flies that they came in with the storm.
Okay.
And that is one of the impacts of climate change. Remember we said that, I don't know if it was with you or with some other, talk session I had online where I mentioned that even the circulatory patterns are changing. Because I have traveled with fellas who are professional mariners. There are guys who, these yacht owners would hire them to come and, move the yacht from here to there. These guys are telling you that when you are accustomed to the Southeast trades and, particular wind patterns, they've changed. And those wind patterns are bringing different kinds of pests, right? Out in Barbados, on the east coast of Barbados, there's something called an observatory. And this is a Sahara dust observatory. So what they've been doing is for decades, they have been collecting samples of Sahara dust. And I mean, when you hear the scientists, they describe the kind of things that it almost make you want to keep your mouth closed, when you're outside, because on that dust is microbes, all kind of microbes, right? All kinds of camel dung, all kind of spores, And when these things get here, they find a fertile environment, they thrive. And they should find a whole new set of diseases, a whole new set of pests, yeah? Because apart from the things that are under 10, we know there are particular particle size that you can actually inhale, and it gets into your lungs, yeah? So that when you talk about this particulate matter, and the scientists start telling you about what is under this microns and so much microns and gets into your lungs and what it can do and so, I mean, scary sounding stuff, but it's just all part of life. The human machine is a fantastic machine, and we could cope with a lot, so that, I'm not saying this to frighten people, just to say that
just
we
part
are,
of our reality.
Exactly. And we are aware of what is coming in, and we know that things are coming in, and we have to be in a position to not only plan for them, but be able to, those that we can predict, how do we have a stock set of reactions? Like I recently taught a course on disaster risk reduction here in Grenada. And as part of that course, we did a field trip literally to NADMA, to the NADMA headquarters. I mean, that's a fantastic facility, right? So if we only learn one thing from Ivan, is what your National Emergency Management Organization should look like and should operate like. In other words, that can't be the first building to go, Now with NADMA, I mean, when you go into that facility, I mean, if you get the chance to get to do the full tour and all that, when you look at it, just from the outside, you look at the construction and realizing that's a bunker. You expect that to survive, literally, And then when you hear what the capabilities are, the access to satellite phones, the this, the that, the center. During Bell, all of us saw the Prime Minister and the Press Secretary and things sitting down, they have their own broadcast facility, etc., etc. So I am not worried. I'm not worried that, it's just that it has to be transformational, and like all change, it has to be managed, And as I say, I don't want to sound like a preacher there, but I've been around this thing for so long that I think I've seen a few sunsets, and I think I understand a little bit about it. And I can tell you that change management is not something that happens like that.
Yeah.
Change has to be managed. That's why they call it change management. So it's not just change occurrence or change by VAPs. It's change management. Somebody has to manage it. And those of us who have studied change management and who have worked in it, some of us believe in something called Cotter's 8-step change management process. And one of the first steps, if you really want to get things to change, there has to be a sense of urgency. Think about it.
Yeah, well,
If you have any amount to talk about barely, it's only when the thing really up on you that you get people to really move, because it's urgent. Human beings are programmed like that. We don't respond well to slow onset things. You ever saw a drought alert? There's never a drought alert, because drought is not something you just get alert about. It's only 3 weeks afterwards you realize, wait, now we're in a drought. People could dead, right? But a flood alert is immediate. So people take that seriously. They pull up what they had to pull up, they get their sandbags, blah, blah, blah. But if it's something that is slow onset, then as human beings, we're not programmed for that. We're programmed to jump and run if a lion jumps out, right? But if you can't see it and if it's something that it cause cancer and taking months or years for you to get the cancer,
Mm.
yeah, you're
Yeah.
worrying about that until
Yeah.
you get it
Right.
diagnosed. Yeah.
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 Yes, because you do hear people make comments, about certain food types. And they say, well,
Oh, yeah.
say what, that doesn't kill. But I mean, what they're saying is that when they eat it, it doesn't poison you in that immediate
Yeah.
way. But
What okay is fatten? What do fatten is purge?
the fact is we actually poisoning ourselves, you
Yeah,
know,
I have
and
no I have no
taking time.
I have no difficulty with that, Pablo. I mean, I'm not the right person to talk to about food and food choices because I have some rather personal choices that I make and
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
that
yeah.
may not go down with
You
everybody,
can't do
right?
that.
So
You can't do it.
I'm not preaching, I'm not teaching, I'm not preaching. I'm just saying that, this whole business about food choices and things
Yeah,
is a shaky business. Let me just tell
yeah.
you let me tell you how shaky it is, Pablo. You know how much trouble I've gotten into. When I say trouble, I mean in terms of people thinking that, a little too far away from the center. People have asked me about food security. Once you ask me about food security, I think you might remember. I just kind of write here because as far as I'm concerned, I'm interested in nutrition security because a lot of this stuff that passes as food is of absolutely no value
So
to
in
me
terms of
or to
nutrition,
anybody else, right? And again, we are all creatures of our past. So Pablo, in 1981, which is what, 40 something years ago, I got my first job as a PAHO consultant in St. Kitts and Nevis, working on something called food and nutrition surveillance. So I was actually looking at how the calories that were being counted, where they came from. And that's when I first found out about empty calories from sugar and blah, blah, blah. So when I talk, it's not because, I just anti everything. It's just that I've been in the trenches, I've been around, I've seen the thing, I mean, like when I tell people in Grenada that I know Old Man Rams, right? Rams that is now in Grenada, right? Rams head office is really in St. Kitts, right? I remember sitting down across the table from Old Man Rams talking about the importation of potatoes and onions into St. Kitts, right? So so when you've been around for that length of time, your perspective is a little different, right? To start with. So when people tell me about food security, I tend not to take them when I talk about nutrition security. Another problem I have is when people tell me about healthy foods. Because Pablo, I know you're sitting down, right? I hope your audience sitting down too. When you tell me about healthy food, I don't really take you on it. Because as far as I'm concerned, there's no such thing as a healthy food. To tell me that this is a healthy food is like telling me that this piece of equipment I have here is a fit treadmill. The treadmill ain't fit. The treadmill is what you use to get fit. These weights I have here, if you can see them, they're not
Mm.
fit weights. No, no. They're the weights that I use to get fit.
They're fit.
So there are foods that I can consume that are nutritious,
Mm.
that can keep me healthy or can
Mm.
make me healthy. But the food in and of itself, I don't want to consider it as being healthy because I'll be tempted now to think that all I have to do is just eat this since it's so healthy.
Yeah.
That's where we run into some serious, serious problems. Because all the people I know who have ever gotten sick in the Caribbean is always from fishing. You know why? Because everybody have this idea that fish is such a healthy. One of the worst cases of food poisoning you could get is from fishing. Because
Yeah.
people tend to undercook fish. One, they tend to store it improperly. I've seen people buying fish already where the eyes gray. They press the flesh sinking and they won't come back up. And these people are telling me that I only eat healthy stuff, And I'm thinking, boy, you gonna eat that thing, you're dead, right? But so I can so when you tell me this is a healthy food, I understand what you mean, but I want you to understand what I mean too, right?
What's yeah,
In and of
right.
itself, it by itself is not healthy. It's nutritious. I there with you. And you tell me this is nutritious. Sure. You can tell me how much carbohydrate, how much protein, how much this, how much that. I'm good with that. But when you tell me that this is a healthy food, I don't worry because that's like telling me that this piece of equipment I have here is fit, Of course, Nick. You might feel the equipment fit here. It's a fitness equipment, but the equipment itself not fit. If you don't use it now, leave that treadmill or that stationary bike park up there, and don't ever go on it and see how fit you'll be, you know? So as I said, that is my, my own little head thing with that, right? But I understand that there are foods that promote health. I prefer to say it that way. Yeah.
Okay. One of the things that's been a major talking point in the post-burial period is the whole issue of climate justice. Can you elaborate on what are the essentials of climate justice?
The essentials of climate
Talking
justice.
about when we say
Yeah.
climate
Yeah. When we talk about climate justice, we are talking about an understanding of the moral and other imperatives around this climate crisis. Now, let me just put it in context for you. The climate change, as far as the entire world is concerned, most of the world is concerned, has been caused by these greenhouse gases, right, that have been emitted. Now, the people who are suffering the most from climate change and the climate crisis aren't the same people who put all of these greenhouse gases into the atmosphere. Yeah. So if you look at it that way, then you can see, why should I be suffering literally because of something you did, right? If there was any justice in the world, you should be at least helping me to get out of the problems that you cause. You with me, Pablo? Right? So that's where the climate justice thing comes. It says that the people who cause the problem or are most responsible for the problem should really be the ones doing something to help the others that are being affected. Yeah? The example I always use, and I want to apologize to any of the people who would have heard me use this already. Yeah? Think about this. You're living in a residential area, right? After you build your house and you're living comfortable, and then somebody goes higher up the street in terms of elevation, and decides to open a factory, right? And they keep pouring all their plastic waste bottles and things into the drain, yeah? The drain that runs in front of your house. But because they're higher up than you, all that stuff comes down when it floods, right? And then eventually, the drains are clogged and your house gets flooded out. Now, in any part of the world, you have to take them to court. I mean, because they're obviously responsible, right? Because if they didn't have all these plastic drains, but bottles in the drain, my house wouldn't flood. Yeah. So you go to them and you tell them, hey, hey, you're responsible for this now. What are you going to do about it, right? Are you going to pay to clean the drain? Are you going to pay to clean out my house? What kind of justice will I get for that? Now, in a normal situation, that's fairly straightforward, right? So that's climate justice in a nutshell, in the sense that the person who caused the problem has a level of responsibility to come up with a just is the adjective now, a just solution, right? Something to do with justice, yeah? Something to do with the moral obligation that they have. Yeah? A slight twist to this, though, is that the same people who have the factory, they said that one day they saw your son drop a plastic bottle into the drain, right? So while they admit, yeah, we're responsible, but you're responsible too. You should stop your child from dropping even just one bottle into the drain because you are part of the problem too. So then they came up with something called common but differentiated responsibility. In other words, both of us responsible for this problem. It's just that I'm more responsible than you, right? So I have more of the effort to put into it than you. But I still expect you to stop your child from putting the one bottle into the drain. Yeah? And that is where in the wider global society, there's something called common but differentiated responsibility. So the first world countries, the countries that were the major polluters, the ones who put all that carbon dioxide and methane and nitrous oxide into the atmosphere that causing us hell now, we are telling them that here now, justice demands that you guys do something about this. Yeah? You must do something about it because you're responsible for it. They have told us, yeah, but I mean, but you put some into the air too, you know. I mean, you look at how many cars you have in Grenada, right? You all just got past PAZ, you know, 9999, I suppose. So at some point you get in the PBA or something. Where I think all that pollution goes, there's something called the atmospheric commons, you know. Just because you're polluting here over Grenada, that carbon dioxide that you produce from your car engine doesn't stay over Montjaloux, it doesn't stay over St. Mark's, it doesn't stay over Florida. It gets dissipated into the whole world, right? So the whole world, you know, is feeling the impact of your one plastic bottle, your one little bit of carbon dioxide from your whole van. Yeah. So that is what climate justice is about. Climate justice is about how do you expect these first world countries, these developed countries to compensate us, because that's what justice is about. Justice is about compensation. So there are different kinds of justice. There's retributive justice, where I punish you for doing wrong. Yeah. There's restorative justice, where I try to compensate you for what you've lost. Yeah, you still with me? Right?
Yeah.
Then there are all kinds of other punitive type ways. And then we can do a swap. We can do a swap, and that's where carbon credits and those things come up, in the sense that, okay, I am polluting here, but you are pulling carbon dioxide out of the air down here in Grenada. Why don't I pay you for continuing to pull carbon dioxide out here so that I could continue putting some more carbon dioxide into the air from my end? Yeah. So there's another end of it too. And then there's the punitive end, where there could be a carbon tax, so that if you produce this thing and you use carbon dioxide to do it, then there's a tax put on you. And some of us have experienced that if you try to fly to the UK, let's say, there's a passenger tax, because, you know, the airplane, it's on your ticket. You can see how many grams of carbon dioxide you're responsible for. And they have factored that into the price. There's a certain amount of money that is going to plant trees in Tanzania, or some arbitrary sounding thing like that, which we don't have time to get into now. But the fact is that is what climate justice is about. It's about holding the people to account who are responsible for the problem that we're in right now, which is what justice is about, right? When somebody kills a breadwinner, I mean, unfortunately, but true, right? Somebody kills a breadwinner. There are some justice systems that say, you know, hey, you work until you pay back all the money that father or mother would have been able to put into the mortgage and into the house. And that's a kind of restorative justice, right? Or there could be just punitive justice, in the sense of, you kill the man, we kill you, right? Sentence you to death, and that's the end of that. Or it's other kinds of justice, you know, where you say, okay, you might not be able to make it up to this family here, but we want you to do some community service. So, you know, you're unpaid debushing for the next 10 years or 15 years or what have you. You understand where I'm coming from? That is what the whole climate justice thing is about. And it is important for us in agriculture, because it is those funds that we're going to need to do the adaptation and mitigation that I keep talking about. In other words, all these things I'm talking about is climate smart agriculture, and this and that, and they using the technology, and they ain't coming for free, you know. Right? And unless, and this is part of what I do now, right? So last year I was in Dubai with Minister Caesar, right? There's the Minister of Agriculture in St. Vincent, right? As his advice, right? So we are there, and we are one of the few sets of agriculture representatives at that meeting, right? And this is something that, again, fortunately, I'm steeped in. I was in Durban, South Africa, back in the day, 2011 or 2012, when we first started talking about agriculture and finance for adaptation and mitigation. Yeah. And all of that is to say that, you know, we have to find ways to finance this adaptation and mitigation thing. Yeah. So Pablo, I'm seeing a little thing there on my battery. I suspect that I'm not too sure. I may have to check my outlet. So let's keep the conversation right now, but I may have to just step aside and a plug, right? But we continue.
Okay.
I'm with you
Okay.
still.
All right.
Yeah, Pablo.
Yeah.
Yeah, as I was saying, continuing. It's
Yeah.
just that I'm getting a plug, reaching a
Oh,
plug.
okay. Okay. You get it. Okay.
Yeah, I need
All
to
right.
plug in my computer in a different outlet here.
Okay. So it does appear that Steve, he says he's not
Yeah.
Mr.
What is
Maximilian.
it? What other question you have for me,
Huh?
Pablo?
Oh, yeah, well, actually, the other question that I have for you is that we see that we had the SIDS meeting, the Small Island Developing States meeting,
In
which,
Antigua.
yeah, which seeks to address, um, um, you know, these kinds of issues. Wait, hold on a minute. Let me get this. Let me get this. Let me get this sorted out. Okay. Yeah. Seemed like my Facebook feed decided to join the conversation. Yeah. Yeah. Uh where was that? Yeah. We had the seeds meeting
Since four meeting.
yeah, the seeds for meeting. And we know that the seeds meeting generally seeks to address a lot of these issues and so on. And we see that going into the meeting, there was you know the there was to be a focus on the whole issue of climate finance, making climate finance work for seeds and building on the outcomes of COP28, enhancing critical forms of financing, aid effectiveness through collaborative partnership and stuff like that. How much would you say of that agenda? Uh, or how well would you say we are doing in terms of that agenda and in terms of providing the appropriate financing that is required to address those issues that we face as small island developing states?
Well, Pablo, I think Pablo,
Yeah, I'm there.
I think we have made some progress. As I mentioned about COP 28 in Dubai and COP 29 that's coming up now in Baku. That starts on Monday actually in Azerbaijan. We collectively as a sector and as SIDS. And one of the things I must mention is that as Grenadians, you should be proud that when Grenada had the presidency of OASIS. OASIS is this organization of small island states. You had people like Dr. Thomas, Spencer Thomas, Decima Williams. These people have really put SIDS on a particular path, a particular pathway to some levels of success that have not been seen since. So we have a history of, of being in the mix, if you like. So that when SIDS 4 came around in Antigua, there was some concern about how do you get this finance to these sectors that are important. Now, of course, the only sector I can speak about with any degree of, familiarity is the agricultural sector. So I can tell you what we were looking for. We are looking for, and this is something that has been accomplished here in Grenada through the Enhanced Direct Access Project, so that there are funds available for justice, for climate justice, for transitions. In other words, you're expecting us to change our agriculture because we can't do the agriculture we did before, given the new circumstances, right? So that transition is going to cost. And if you want us to have that transition, then you have to provide us with the finance. And that's where all this climate finance stuff. Climate finance is simply any funds that you use for adaptation or mitigation. And for your viewers and listeners who may not be very au courant with the difference, adaptation is what we have to do to survive, right? So everything we do that helps us survive to make sure we ain't go dead, literally, that's adaptation. Mitigation is what we do to reduce our carbon footprint. What do we do to reduce the amount of emissions we're providing or we are putting into the atmosphere? That's what mitigation is. So these funds, these climate funds are going to be used for either adaptation or mitigation, or sometimes both. Because sometimes you can adapt and it has had a mitigative component in it too, right? So like if part of your adaptation is to come up with a solar powered reverse osmosis plant. So you're adapting to the lack of rainfall and the drought, but you're also mitigating because what you're doing now is you're providing water without using energy from the grid, right? Countries that had to pump water, let's say, they're now using solar power. So that's mitigation and adaptation in the same project. Yeah. Does that help? I mean, I hope I explained that. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. From all that you've said, right? And from those issues that we've been discussing, it would therefore call for a certain level of understanding and appreciation by the people in general. We have to go through a transformation, really, in order to get there. How appreciative would you say that our people are in general? How knowledgeable are we about all of these matters and so relating to climate change and how they directly impact our livelihood and our human existence?
I think we're very well placed. When you look at the quality of the negotiators we have in this part of the world, I mean, I'm sorry for bringing up, I'm not here advertising for Spencer, right? But I mean, but there are names that come up, So the Spencer Thomases, the Leon Charles of this world. Yeah. These are people who, when I say get it, they do more than understand it, the Trevor Thompsons of this world. These are people who have been going to these negotiations, and when you listen to the ministers, especially the ministers like Jimmy Fletcher, let's say, out of St. Lucia. Well, Jimmy Fletcher was the Minister of Communications and something in St. Lucia at the time of the Paris Accord. And he was one of the Caribbean lead negotiators, if you like. But I'm sure Jimmy would tell you that it's people like Trevor Thompson and Leon Charles and Spencer Thomas that would have gotten him to the stage where he could have those negotiations. So we are not short of firepower. I'm sure you've heard it said that, I mean, as a small island developing states, and so, we punch above our weight. The quality of the negotiations that come out of these, out of these islands, these small islands, not just in the Caribbean, but in the Pacific as well. So I'm not worried about that aspect of it. What I'm worried about is the dilution, the greenwashing, the fact that a number of times we are being asked to transition using technologies that we have to buy from the people who caused the problem in the first place. Let me tell you what I mean by that. I mean, I'm sorry to be so blunt, but check this example. You're walking down the road minding your business, yeah? Some fella comes up to you and slashes you, right? Takes a razor, slash it. I mean, unprovoked, I mean, you're minding your own business. This person comes up and slash you. I mean, any part of the world, you're supposed to be able to take them to court, Justice demands that, you should do something. So the court awards you, $50,000 for your surgery, for your reconstructive surgery, because the man slashed you up, only to find out that the person who slashed you is a surgeon and we're going to pay that same person to patch you up. And that is what some of these transitions look like. So the same countries that cause the problem are now providing us with the solutions that we have to pay for it. So although the money sounds like a grant, even though it sounds as if your $50,000 is the award that you won from the court, you have to take that same $50,000 and pay it to the guy who slashed you in the first place, because you now realize there's a surgeon too, you know. So in other words, we pay them twice, we pay them to be bad. So there's nothing stopping him from slashing another person if he knows, I'll get a patch up, right? So why should he stop slashing if you're going to be rewarding him? So what people like me are saying is that here, when you give me my 50,000 US, it is not a grant. It is reparations. You are paying me for the suffering that I underwent. So let me take my $50,000 and let a local bush doctor stitch me up. I don't want to be paying the same guys who caused the problem to fix me up. Yeah? You see what I'm saying? So that people like me get to be, fairly unpopular outside the region when they come up with examples like that. Yeah? Because it's the same country that caused the problem in the first place that's selling us the solutions now. And I am one of those people who say, look, let me find my solution myself. I wanted $50,000 because I earned it. It's not a grant. You didn't give it to me out of the goodness of your heart. You gave it to me because you're guilty. And there's an international court of public opinion or whatever else that says that, look now, you have to pay Steve the $50,000 for slashing him. It is now up to Steve to decide how I want to use that $50,000. I shouldn't have to be tied to a surgeon in the US, which is where the problem started in the first place, to come and stitch me up. I should be able to say, look, I'll go by SGU and see some local grad, and let that person stitch me up. Let the 50,000 US stay here in Grenada. And that is the battle we're fighting now. So there's a lot of talk about, 200 million this and 200 million that, but if the money goes right back to the people who caused the problem in the first place, then there's nothing just about that. That has nothing to do with justice. Yeah. And I'm telling you that we have the quality of negotiators now. We always had them. I shouldn't say no. It makes it sound as if, they just get up on. We've always had them, from Decima Williams back, to be able to say that we know how to fix our issues. What we want from you is the climate finance. In other words, if it is going to be if there's going to be justice, you can't give me the solution and then tell me how to spend it.
So what kind of reception have you been having as a consequence of that kind of approach, of that kind
well,
of
it doesn't go down well as you would expect. You would expect it to go down well. But but the evidence is clear. Once you lay it out like that and you have the right people around the table, you get things done. The major institution that type of thing refers to would be the GCF, the Green Climate Fund.
Okay.
And that same Green Climate Fund has been responsible for something called a Readiness Grant, which I'm not too sure many of your listeners and viewers know about this. Is that
the Readiness Grant?
Yeah, every signatory to the Paris Agreement, right? All 180 something, or how many of us, because Grenada is a signatory, Trinidad is a signatory, all CARICOM states are signatories, yeah? When we signed on the dotted line there, we said, we're trying to hold global warming, the increases, to 2 degrees or 1.5 degrees centigrade, yeah? We're trying to hold everything down to that. And to do that, each country has decided that they're going to provide the world, the globe, with just how they're going to do that. And it's something called a nationally determined contribution. Now, let me run this. I know for Grenadians, I have to be very careful when I say so. The NDCs, right, is really the nationally determined contribution, right? I'm not to do no political party.
Political.
This is the nationally determined contributions, right? This is what each each country says they're going to do to reduce their emissions. Yeah, this is a very important part, Pablo. So I hope your listeners are with us. All right. Each country has said, okay, this is what we're going to do to reduce our emissions, right? So it's called nationally determined contributions. And to be able to do that, the money had to come from somewhere. Because a lot of times we can't do it on our own, given our small size, given the size of the economies, et cetera, et cetera. In other words, we can't do away with petroleum-based energy generation. We can't just like to just shut down all the plants and go solar. Who's paying for that, right? So that is where the climate finance comes in. That's where the GCF comes in. So each couple of years, these countries have to say, okay, this is how I'm going to reduce my emissions via this nationally determined contributions. Yeah. My job as somebody advising a minister of agriculture is to see how the agricultural sector can get some of those funds. Because thus far, we are not in the front line. Transportation is in the front line. Energy production is in the front line. Even tourism sometimes gets their little piece of the pie, right? So my job as a climate finance expert is to ensure that the agricultural sector gets some of that funding. And to be sure that we don't take that funding and pay the same fellows who caused the problem in the first place. So you see how complicated it gets? Because I don't have anything against the European Union, I don't have anything against America, right? But I'm saying that if you caused that problem and you have been found guilty, no uncertain terms as being the culprits. And out of that, they said, okay, well, I'm going to put this money into the pool to fix it. You can't take the same money that you put into the pool to fix it and then pay your own consultants using your own technologies to fix it. I mean, that's something not right about that, right? As we say sometimes, you're double dipping. You're making it.
Speaking of which, how significant is carbon dioxide emissions into this whole scenario?
Well, it is the major gas that we call, it's major name we call, it's the major culprit. But in terms of greenhouse gas effectiveness, in other words, the ones that cause problems, methane causes more problems than carbon dioxide. It's just that we measure everything in carbon dioxide equivalents. Let me repeat that. Okay, so there are a number of greenhouse gases. There are a number of these gases that act as a shield around the earth that keeps in this heat. Yeah? Similar to the way a glass in a greenhouse in temperate countries keeps in that heat. Yeah? You with me, Pablo?
Yeah.
So of all the greenhouse gases, the one that is most common, the one that we talk about the most is carbon dioxide. But it is not the biggest threat. The biggest threat tends to be methane, right? In terms of its capacity to be a greenhouse gas. In other words, how effective it is as a gas to hold in the heat, yeah? That causes the problem. But because we need to use, we must use a form of currency. In other words, it's as if we're talking about gross domestic product for all the countries in the Caribbean. Instead of quoting some in EC dollars and quoting some in TT dollars and quoting some in Jamaican dollars, some in Ghanaian dollars, we might decide, look, let me just use US dollars across the board, right? So we're using US dollars as the common way to measure all of this. In the same way we use carbon dioxide to measure all greenhouse gases. So all greenhouse gases are measured in terms of carbon dioxide equivalents. In other words, how much US dollars equivalent it would be for your GDP and for Jamaica or Guyana or where have you. Are you with me? Or am I going one more time?
Very well so. Very well so.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, as you know very well, there are those who say that that climate change and the
hoax
issue of the emissions and so on, yeah. We have Richard Lindzen, who is a who he is a distinguished senior fellow, also emeritus professor at meteorology at MIT, and he pioneered research in atmospheric dynamics, and that has that led to his conclusion that the sensitivity of surface temperature to increases in atmospheric carbon dioxide is considerably below that necessary to generate disastrous climate change.
Right.
What's your verdict on this?
I'm in no way prepared to go into any argument with any emeritus professor. I mean, so that's a non-starter. My thing is this: I am aware of all kinds of research showing all kinds of results, and as a scientist myself, I know that if I set out to demonstrate some effects, I can set it up in a way that would present my case best. So I have no
There is
problem.
also there is also an argument.
Also a matter of
There,
funding.
there's
Who's
also
funding it is also important.
that the increases in CO2 are actually causing the greening of the planet.
That was very early on. Remember, as you were starting to say in the introduction, I was part of the very first climate change and agriculture and water conference in the region. It was held in 2002, I think July of 2002 at Cape Park Hotel. I was responsible, I was the facilitator for the agriculture end of it, and the water end of it was done by Dr. Lester Ford, right? Who was a big wig in WASA at the time, which is the Trinidad Water and Sewage Authority. So I'm not just, talking off the top of my head, I have the facts, I have the figures, and I was there in the room. When we first heard about the increases in carbon dioxide, a lot of us in the Caribbean and in the tropical world started to smile, You say, well, that can't be a bad thing. More carbon dioxide, more photosynthesis, more production of food, right? And for those of us who are into the science of the thing, and for your listeners who may be scientists or botanists out there, will know that there are two main photosynthetic routes. In other words, the way that plants make their food using photosynthesis, there's something called a C3 pathway and there's a C4 pathway. The C4 plants are plants like sugar cane and corn and so, and they are believed to be able to handle greater concentrations of carbon dioxide. Yeah. As I said, I'm not trying to show off or play technical. I'm just putting it in context. So the idea is that these C4 plants, we thought, hey boy, well, this better for us, man. For once the tropical world getting a little blind, If it's carbon dioxide going up, well, then of course photosynthesis will go up. But like everything else, there's a feedback mechanism. You can have too much of a good thing. I mean, you could say that water is good for you, but you don't want to drown, right? You don't want to be so surrounded by water that you can't even open your mouth. Yeah. So it's okay if you have enough water to drink. It's also okay if you have too much water, but it doesn't drown you. But there come a point where even though water is such a good thing and you need it for life, etc., if too much of it will drown you. The same with carbon dioxide. There are concentrations of carbon dioxide that actually shut down the whole thing. In other words, it's almost as if you're drowning the system. Yeah? So this thing about carbon dioxide actually greening the planet, that is not entirely true, right? Of course, there are some plants that are benefiting from the increased concentration of carbon dioxide, but as an overall result, it is very difficult to get a scientist to agree to anything. But when you hear the majority of scientists, are leaning in the same direction. Remember, true scientists don't ever tell you anything like it was proven. No. Because we know that it only takes one little flaw to disprove all that you thought you knew already, right? But what scientists tend to say is that the evidence has shown, right? Clinical tests have shown, so and so and so has shown they'll never say it's proven. Because those of us who are serious scientists and things, we know about Popper's theory on proof and all that, right? So you'll hardly hear say that was proven. What we say is that evidence is overwhelming. The evidence is overwhelming. Yeah, we don't use the word proven, right? Scientists tend not to use that. They say that, the evidence is, so that when the IPCC, which is the biggest body of scientists looking at this climate change thing, right? It's the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. People like Professor Taylor and so Dr. Agard out of Trinidad and Taylor and Dave Rankin and these guys out of Jamaica. I mean, the real brain power behind these things, They too tell you, when they write it, they say, there's greater, they greater belief, they're more inclined to believe so, because they always realize that, there's a 0.0001% chance that it could be off, right? But when scientists agree to that point, it is what gets us to the point of saying things like, even advertising, in the old days, you could see an advertisement that says, this thing kills 100% of household germs. No scientist will agree to that, because there will always be the 1 micro, the 1 millionth microbe that's still floating around. You can just explode an atomic bomb, right? So now we see that Lysol will kill 99.9% of household germs, because they realize that if you want to have any kind of scientific sounding truth to it, then it can't be this total thing. It can't be killing 100%. Yeah. So that would be my response to professors like that. And another thing too, you have to see who's funding these studies, because there's a very serious movement out there, just like there was a serious movement with the tobacco industry. When all this talk about cancer, about cigarette smoke causing cancer and so, there were 1,000,001 studies out there that show that, hey, that's all talking about. Smoking will kill you at all, right? But then you have to look at who's funding it, how the research was conducted, and what was the motivation for saying that, yeah? In the same way, there's an oil lobby out there that says, hey, don't worry up your head, man. Buy a gas guzzler, man, eat, drink, and be merry, this carbon dioxide thing is a cyclical thing, Every 1,000 years, the planet is warm up and then, but my argument to that is, I agree with your partner. Every 1,000 years is warm. You know what's the problem? It's warming up in a year when I'm alive. And my relatives are alive. So you see this 1,000 year, we have to do something about this time now. See, next 1,000 years when it come around again, if you're still around, you can handle it then. But see, no. So I don't care how many cycles that come in. Yeah. Pablo.
So, well, as we close for the evening, what final words would you want to leave us with, given the fact that, well, we see what Beryl did for us. Beryl was one of she came so very
earliest forming storms.
Early.
Yeah.
And then you had what? You had about 17 name systems after that. One of them developing into hurricanes and so on. We see that in the US now, they're saying that the cost of the damages that they suffered during that season could really go into it could be a record amount going into.
And the fact that the storms are reaching further inland. Usually when you live inland in the US, you figure, storms is a coastal thing, you don't have to worry about no storm. Where you are in North Carolina, I mean, no storm is supposed to reach quite there, right? That's one aspect of it. But one of the things that I'd want to impress upon your guests is that it's one thing to have scientists like myself come and talk about these things and use all these fancy terms and blah, 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 blah. But there are some fundamentals that we need to get straight, especially when people with fancy sounding titles talk about these things, emeritus professor this and that, and, professor from here and there and all that. There are certain simple truths. When you hear a scientist talking about things like models, climate models, a climate model does not give you predictions. So, when you hear people say, well, they did all the modeling and they predict that there'll be 8 or 9 storms or 10 or 12 storms, no. What they do is they give you probabilities. And that's a big difference. There's a big difference between a prediction and a probability.
Okay.
Yeah. Because if I give you a prediction, if I predict that tomorrow morning, the sun will rise at 5:37, right? Those are normal predictions. You could open your iPhone now and look and see what time sunrise will be tomorrow. 5:37, yeah. And it might actually be 5:37 on the dot, depending on where you are, of course, right? But with all the complications of climate modeling for this part of the world, remember we are not using global climate models. When the scientists that do these models for the globe, all our countries, all 15 of the CARICOM countries could fit into one of their blocks. So in other words, any prediction they give for that block, would be for everybody. But we know that there are differences between Guyana and Trinidad and between Jamaica and Belize. So that what our scientists have done is they've broken up those blocks into smaller units so that we can get more precise probabilities, but it's not prediction, it's never predictions, And that to me is one of the biggest problems we have. So that sometimes because the scientists saying it, they tend to give us more credit than we are asking for. What we are saying is that there's a probability that so. But predictions and things for astrologers and for, and for meteorologists, you could predict, a shower tomorrow or something, but the kind of long-term modeling we are doing, well, not we, but the climate scientists are doing, they are giving probabilities. And I think once in other words, we learn to treat all of this stuff with a grain of salt, You take it in, of course, it's coming from experts, it's coming from people who have studied this all their life, they know more than you do. That's a given. I have no difficulty with that. But you should not get to the point where you feel that because they know more than you do, that they know everything. And we most certainly do not know everything. Yeah? So that your job as an informed citizen, as somebody who's been following Pablo and following, GEMFM, and so, you want to be able to sift through all of this stuff and make sure that you become more knowledgeable based on the information. And let me just put in a quick plug here. I believe in something called the Dikower continuum. In other words, there's data, there's information, there's knowledge, there's understanding, and then there's wisdom. Now, data in and of itself is useless. If I tell you, Pablo, boy, 15, 10, 12, 18, those are data points. You don't have a clue what I'm talking about. You can be talking about anything anywhere, right? So at that point, data is meaningless. It becomes information. If I tell you, boy, Pablo, 15 degrees Celsius, 20 degrees Celsius. Now, if you are knowledgeable, you could take that information, right, and put it into context and say, that is now part of my knowledge. I now know that 15 degrees Celsius, that's kind of cool, That's kind of cool, It ain't freezing like 15 degrees Fahrenheit. 15 degrees Fahrenheit would be ice, and frozen, right? But I still know, based on the information that I was given, because information doesn't help you. Right now, you know everything there is to know about cancer, Pablo. See that you have sitting down on the side there? You could go on Google and all that information and says right there. But that doesn't help you because it's not part of your knowledge base. Until you spend the time and read through all them things, right? And internalize all that information, is only then you become knowledgeable on cancer enough to be able to carry on a conversation with a MD. Yeah. So there's data, there's information. When you internalize that information, like if anybody has been listening to us for the last 2 hours and say, okay, I internalize some of this stuff. So they're now more knowledgeable based on the information that they were picked up. Yeah. But that knowledge, knowing that 15 degrees centigrade is cool, then gives you the understanding to appreciate why, you should be thinking about, should I wear a sweater?
Yeah, should I?
And
Can I go
wise when you make that wise decision. Yeah, but if I go out at 15 degrees centigrade, I should wear a sweater, because that means I've moved from data, which is just 15, 18, to information, which is 15 degrees Celsius, to knowledge, which is my knowing that means is cool. And I understand that I have to move differently. In other words, I was planning to go outside in a wife beater, but now that I know it's 15 degrees centigrade, I have understanding enough to know that I should make a wise choice. I should use wisdom to wear a sweater instead.
Mm.
So there ended the sermon. Sorry to carry on so much. But Pablo, as you can tell, I had fun. So
Yeah. Man, I'm telling you, it is good because you see, um, this is that's a topic that is so sexy, right?
yeah.
As a consequence of that, we don't give it too much attention, right?
But we
But
feel the effect, but we feel the effects though.
yes, and we feel the effects of it, and we are faced we we are faced with the realization, or we are faced with a situation where it impacts directly on, or it becomes a threat to our livelihood,
Of
yeah,
course. And our
to
very survival.
to our human existence. But
Yeah.
we don't really appreciate it for what it is in a lot of ways, and
Yeah, but Pablo, remember the first point I told you is this sense of urgency. It's only when it's urgent it
yeah,
becomes
you
important.
really,
During
really,
COVID was important. During the eruptions in St. Vincent it was important. During
yeah.
Beryl it was important. The night before Beryl, everybody and their brother was an expert in agriculture.
But I heard you talking about that. I hear the Prime Minister say that they had to send the police and go and speak with some of the people who were organizing an event because Beryl was about to come, and they were having a party and thing and having a good time. And yeah, I'm gonna tell them, listen, you all need to shut this thing down and go and prepare for Beryl because Beryl
Yeah,
coming.
yeah. But as a trainee, I can relate to that because I can remember when you used to have hurricane party in Smokey and Bunty in Trinidad. I remember seeing fellas on TV on the night, I'll never forget it, the night of October 6, 1993, when Hurricane Brett passed between
Mhm,
Trinidad and Tobago and killed
mhm,
nobody in Trinidad and Tobago. Went down Venezuela, killed people in Venezuela, went up to Mexico in the Gulf
mhm.
and killed people up there. And there were people in Smokey and Bunty saying, we ain't afraid hurricane or hurricane afraid we. Right? So I understand it. As I say, as a Trini, as a Trini, I come from the land of, of God and me and all that, So
Well, we used to say God is a Grenadian until Hurricane Ivan came. So
no, but God is a Grenadian because otherwise everybody that get flattened. The fact that people survive shows that God is a Grenadian. So
uh, and it was a
trust
good
me,
thing that
it could have been a lot, it could have been a lot worse.
that Ivan came in daylight. If Ivan had come
Yeah,
in
there you
midnight.
go, there you go,
But,
there you go,
but
there you go.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, well, thank you very much again, Steve.
Hey, Pablo, no problem. No problem. No problem. No
Yeah,
problem.
thanks to
Thanks to
those who
your
joined us.
host, to Gem
Yeah,
for giving us a little platform to have this little old talk.
we can have these kind of conversations. And as I say, it's not the sexy ones, it's not the ones that, but we have to do these types because this is where it's at, where the kind of decisions that are required surrounding those issues. That's where you get those really significant social and other economic and other issues, productive issues being discussed.
And
Because if we are serious about reviving our rural economy, we cannot ignore agriculture, and we cannot ignore increasing our productivity. Yeah, you were going to say something?
I've staked my entire career on it. So I
Yeah.
obviously believe it. So, and I'm not about giving up anytime soon. I'm not about throwing my hands in the air or thinking that, we go dead. We will
Mm.
survive. We'll get past this. But as I said, we may lose some people along the way, and that's what concerns me, that we keep to a minimum the number of people we lose along the way before we get to that,
Mm.
final state where we have our business organized and we transform. Yeah.
Yeah.
But there's many a slip twixt cup and lip. So
All
we have,
right.
we have to see what we do.
Okay, Steve, all the best, yeah? And
Yeah,
thank
man.
you very much, yeah? Thanks to those
All
who
right.
joined us. Until next week, I'll be having another goodly gentleman. from St. Vincent joining me next week. I'll be telling you more about that during the course of the week.
Cool. I mean, we've done St. Vincent a lot today, so.
Yeah. Wow. Yes. St. Vincent.
Yeah.
St. Vincent is my second home in the OECS.
Well, I have a lot of second homes, as you know. I spent a lot of time in St. Vincent. I was
Yes.
on the board. I was on the board of Winford for more than a decade, so I used to be in St. Vincent,
Okay.
much as a resident, so.
All right. Okay, bro.
No
All the
problem.
best.
Yeah, man.
Cheers. Yeah.
All the best. Cheers.
Yeah. Yeah. There we go.